In a valley wrapped by endless hills and slow-moving rivers, there lived a man named Kenji. To outsiders, he seemed to have everything. A beautiful home made of smooth cedar wood, a thriving garden filled with plum trees, and a peaceful life untouched by the chaos of nearby towns. Every morning, Kenji would rise with the sun, tend to his garden, and sit quietly by the riverbank, watching the water slip past like silver threads. But beneath the surface of his perfect life, something was wrong. Kenji felt it most in the quiet hours, when the day was over, when the noise of tasks and obligations faded. That was when his mind grew loud. Small worries gnawed at him, regrets about things unsaid, anxiety about mistakes he might make tomorrow. Conversations replayed endlessly in his head, like old songs he couldn't turn off. No matter how peaceful the world around him was, Kenji carried a storm inside. He didn't speak of it. He believed it was normal, something everyone carried quietly. But deep down, he wondered, if I have everything I once wished for, why can't I feel at peace? One evening, unable to quiet his mind, Kenji wandered into the forest beyond the village. The path was dim, the air heavy with the scent of pine. There, beneath an ancient tree whose branches nodded like old hands, sat a monk in meditation. Without thinking, Kenji approached him. And when the monk finally opened his eyes, Kenji bowed low and asked the question that had weighed on him for years. "Master, why does peace leave me, even when I have everything I ever wanted?" The monk smiled faintly, as if he had heard this question many times before. "Because," he said, "there is one habit that can poison even the purest heart." He tapped the ground beside him, inviting Kenji to sit. "And tonight," he said softly, "you will see it for yourself." Kenji sat cross-legged beside the monk, the earth cool beneath him. The forest whispered around them, branches shifting, distant owls calling. For a while, the monk said nothing. Instead, he picked up a handful of smooth stones from the forest floor and laid them carefully between them. He held up the first stone. "This," he said, "is the weight of yesterday." He placed it in Kenji's hand. Then he lifted a second. "This is the fear of tomorrow." He placed it too in Kenji's hand. Then a third. "This is the hunger for what others have." One by one, he placed stones into Kenji's open palms. Regrets, fears, comparisons, resentments, each one small on its own. But together, their weight grew. Kenji's arms began to tremble under the burden. The monk looked at him calmly and said, "This is how most people live. Every day, adding more to what they carry. Some stones they pick up knowingly, others without even realizing it." Kenji shifted uncomfortably, the stones pressing into his skin. The monk leaned in closer. "But there is one habit more dangerous than any stone you can hold. A habit so quiet, so constant, that you don't notice it until your hands and your heart are full." Kenji struggled to keep the stone steady. "What habit?" he asked, breath short. The monk smiled, not unkindly. "The habit of holding on." Kenji looked down at the stones in his hands, feeling their weight not just in his arms, but deep in his chest. He had thought peace was something you found outside, a quiet home, a beautiful garden, a life free from chaos. But now he realized, no matter how still the world around him was, if his hands and heart were full, there was no space left for peace to enter. The monk spoke again, his voice soft but certain. "Holding on becomes a habit. You hold on to what hurt you. You hold on to what scared you. You hold on to what you think you must protect." He picked up another stone, larger than the rest, and placed it carefully atop the others. Kenji's hands dropped slightly under the growing burden. "And after enough time," the monk continued, "you stop noticing the weight. You believe it is part of you. You think the heaviness is who you are. Kenji's arms ached now. He wanted to drop the stones, to free himself, but something in him resisted. The monk watched him quietly. "This," he said, "is why peace leaves." Kenji swallowed hard. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked. The monk smiled gently. "You cannot carry everything, and you do not have to." He pointed to the stones. "But only you can choose what you let go of." Kenji's fingers tightened around the stones, as if even now, even knowing the cost, he feared losing them. Not because they were precious, but because they were familiar. If this story speaks to you, consider subscribing and tap the bell so you don't miss what comes next. The monk rose to his feet and motioned for Kenji to follow him. Still holding the stones, Kenji staggered to stand. His arms burned with the weight, but something deeper ached inside him, the ache of realization. They walked a narrow path through the trees until they reached a small clearing where a shallow stream cut through the earth. The monk turned to Kenji. "Step into the water," he said. Kenji hesitated. His arms shook. His mind screamed at him to hold on. But something quieter, a voice he hadn't heard in years, whispered, "Let go." He stepped into the stream. The water was cold, rushing gently around his ankles. The stones grew heavier still. The monk spoke from the bank. "Peace is not something you chase. It is something that remains when you stop clinging to what chases you." Kenji looked at the stones, each one a memory, a fear, a regret. He thought about the countless nights spent replaying old conversations, the worry over what he had said or hadn't said, the fear of what others thought, the endless comparisons to people who didn't even know he was competing. Every stone was something he had chosen to carry, not once, but every day. He tightened his grip one last time, the habit so deeply wired into him it felt like part of his body. Then he heard the monk's voice again, softer this time. "You are not what you carry." The words cut through him sharper than any blade. Kenji looked at his hands, trembling under the weight, and for the first time, he loosened his grip. One by one, Kenji opened his fingers. The first stone slipped from his grasp and dropped into the water. A soft splash, a small ripple. The second followed, then the third. Each time a stone left his hand, he felt a strange emptiness, like a part of him was being torn away. But with that emptiness came something else. Space. He hesitated over the last two stones. They seemed heavier, though he knew they weighed the same. One represented the voices of doubt that had lived in his mind for years. The other, the fear of being seen as weak if he ever let go. Kenji closed his eyes, breathing deeply, feeling the cold stream against his skin, feeling the ache in his arms, feeling the heavy silence of decision. And then he released them both. The final stones fell into the water and disappeared into the stream's slow, relentless current. Kenji stood there, arms empty, fingers tingling with relief and confusion. He half expected to feel broken without them. Instead, he felt lighter than he had in years, as if his own soul had been waiting patiently for this moment, the moment when he would stop defining himself by what he clung to. He turned to see the monk standing at the edge of the clearing, a quiet pride in his eyes. Kenji stepped out of the stream. His clothes clung to him, but he no longer cared. For the first time, he wasn't carrying yesterday, or fearing tomorrow. He was simply here. If this story speaks to you, consider subscribing and tap the bell so you don't miss what comes next. The monk walked to Kenji's side and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You see," he said, "peace was never something you lost. It was something you buried." Kenji nodded slowly, feeling the truth of those words settle deep inside him. All those years, he had believed that more effort, more control, more thinking would bring him peace. But peace was never something to be achieved by doing more. It was uncovered by carrying less. The monk gestured toward the stream. "This water," he said, "flows not because it holds onto the stones in its path, but because it lets them pass." Kenji sat on a rock by the bank, his legs weak, but his spirit steady. The sky above them turned golden as the sun began to set, the last light shimmering across the ripples where his stones had fallen. He realized then, peace doesn't come from perfection. It doesn't come from fixing every mistake or answering every doubt. It comes from trusting that you are already enough when you stop holding on to what you're not. As the first stars appeared in the evening sky, Kenji bowed deeply to the monk. "Thank you," he said, "not just for the lesson, but for the permission to finally let go." The monk smiled. "You were always free," he said. "You just needed to remember." Kenji rose, feeling lighter not just in body, but in soul. And as he walked back toward the village, he carried nothing but the quiet rhythm of his own breath, and a heart finally, truly at peace. What are you ready to finally let go of, to make space for your own peace? Share in the comments. Your story matters.